I'm sure you love my disclaimers by now, but I have to give another one here as unfortunately Sarah recorded through her computer mic this time and not her actual microphone. Again, it's just a mistake that sometimes happens and we hope it won't happen again, but I just thought I'd give this little disclaimer before we get into the podcast, but please do stick around despite the poor audio quality on Sarah's part because it's a very good episode and you can trust me on this one. Sarah, did you hear that sound?
No. What sound?
It's the sound of us making it to double figures in terms of episodes. We have made it to episode 10 of the Tune In podcast. So welcome to this very, very special episode of making it past the single figure mark. Again, we apologise for last week of not having a proper episode. There were just some things that rose up, but we hope that you enjoyed the bonus clip of all the times things went wrong, or certainly the times that we found would be quite funny. But we are back with our regular content, with our arbitrary theme for this week being...
Names. So, names of people, surnames of famous people, maybe, in the song titles.
So that's the main premise. We also have a question submitted by a different Sarah that isn't the
Not
Sarah
me.
on the podcast. Yeah, it's not this Sarah. And then of course just the standard stuff of what we've been listening to over the course of the previous 2 weeks now because of the gap it has been since we last recorded.
Yeah. It's been a while. Good to be back, though. So, Harry, would you like to start us off this week with your top 5?
Yeah, I'll start mine off. Now, the weird thing was, I kind of half meant this, but most of the songs that I enjoy, which have a name in it, or some of them at least, have some social commentary on them. And there was one that I would have included, but I decided that I've already got 3 songs on social commentary, so I decided to exclude Tupac's Brenda's Got a Baby, but definitely go and listen to that because that is a fantastic song. But my first one definitely falls into the category of social commentary, which is the song Leslie by Dave featuring the singer Ruel. This is the other song from the album Psychodrama that I alluded to all of those weeks ago, and it appears in the quasi-concept album just after Dave has been asked by the psychiatrist if he ever thinks about other people's life stories. The response to which is that he launches into this 11-minute song about a woman who has lost her character as a result of being in a toxic relationship. But there are so many layers, developments, twists, and just general turns to the story that it took me a long, long time to get it right. It took me a few listens to understand it completely. But Dave, ever the proficient storyteller, brings it together expertly. He also stresses at the end that it's more than just a song, but more a message to anyone in his position, or in their position rather. And it's also based on stories that actually happened to his relatives, just to add to the authenticity of it all. Once again, from an album which blew me away as a whole, this just was incredible, and I couldn't praise it highly enough.
So yeah, I actually really, really liked this. I didn't expect to, but like just looking at the who it was, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a rap one, and like, ugh. But I really liked it, and actually I shouldn't have been surprised because I liked the previous one that you mentioned that was a Dave one. But no, I think it was just really unique sounding, and I think the backing, the instrumental backing to it, enhanced the story more than like a sort of what you'd think of in a typical rap backing, if that makes sense. And also Ruel's voice is really nice, and I've never heard of him before. I guess you've sort of answered the question, but I was just more intrigued to see if you go into more detail about it. Like, you mentioned it was a sort of concept album. I just wondered, what is the story of the album, and then how does this fit in?
Okay, so this album isn't like a standard concept album like, for example, Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar, which documents his upbringing in Compton. But it's more a concept album with Dave being in a therapy session. So it's his journey going through mental health help. So visiting the psychiatrist and speaking to him about his various experiences, his life experiences, and why he has ended up in this state of manic depression. If you hear the first song on the album, Psycho, it kind of sets the tone as to A, why he's in this position, and B, the circumstances which have led him to be even more depressed than he might have already been. And this basically is part of the third part of the album, where it's more in terms of other people and not just about himself. So how his relationships with other people have affected him. And because obviously he grows to know Leslie, or supposedly grows to know Leslie, whilst on the train, he can then understand her life story much more clearly, and therefore, gain this mindset of being like, hang on a second, this is not just like one case. This is horrendously common. And so that's when it appears in the album, really. It's like when the psychiatrist asks, do you ever consider other people's stories? It's basically just a therapy session. It's kind of like a side plot, almost.
It sort of gives like the album a out of musical context, if you like, rather than a full-on story line.
Within the music, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting.
Yes, it is such an amazing album. If you haven't listened to the whole album, please, like, if I will not recommend any more album more highly than this. And again, this is just one of the tracks which maybe sit back and just think, wow. I don't have. There was like one bit in it which I was a bit like hazy on, and even then, it's still an amazing bit of wordplay. So, otherwise, everything else about the track I thought was excellent. So,
I'm starting to think that you've found me a rapper that I actually like, because I haven't heard a Dave song that I don't like yet. I mean, I've heard a few, not his whole discography, but
I think the other one which you may like is a song called Question Time, which was released back in 2018, and is essentially a very scathing political commentary on all the political leaders at the time, so Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn and David Cameron as well, and all the stuff around Grenfell and the NHS dying, which is even more poignant nowadays.
Yeah.
So that would be another song which I would also recommend. That is my number one song rather. So my number two is a tiny bit tenuous, but I did check with Sarah because she decided the theme for this week, and I did ask, can surnames be allowed? And she said only if it's a recognisable surname. And considering the name of the song is called Reagan, I think you know what the song in question might be about. And it's by Killer Mike and was released back in 2012 off his fantastic studio album R.A.P. Music, which was produced by LP, who went on to form Run the Jewels with him, who I've spoken about before on this podcast. So the first verse basically discusses how rappers, including themselves, propagate lies in their songs, especially of their lavish lifestyle, and how it wrongly encourages others to be like them in order to make money. So it kind of it's almost like a serve, or set up for a serve, for the absolute smash that is the second verse, which spews unbridled vitriol at Reagan's policies, the Reaganomics, the war on drugs, and the permission of slavery in prison, amongst others. And considering he was growing up in during Reagan's presidency, he obviously is very clued up on the situation from a personal perspective, and he's also very well educated on, historical matters. I can also recommend a speech that he did in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder, which was completely impromptu, completely off the top of his head, and it shook me so much because he knows so much of his stuff. And if you haven't seen it, it's probably on YouTube somewhere. Go and look it up. And this song, again, Reagan, just shows how much he knows about the situation in politics in America.
Yeah. So before I say how much I don't like it, I do want to just say one thing.
Oh no.
However, I do agree. Or not agree, but I do really hear the message. That is one thing I did like about it, and the topic was really interesting. And I mean, I don't remember much, but I did study Reagan and all that at A-level history. All the stuff I forgot he did, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of see his point, to be honest. So yeah, but I didn't really, unlike the first one, I didn't really I didn't think the backing of it, like the instrumental bit, fit with the topic in the way that the first one did. I think the first one fits so well, and you sort of spoiled me with that, to the point where this was sort of just like a standard rap song, and I was a bit like, oh, is that it? I'm sure it's fine, but I think because I was a bit spoiled by the first one.
I would disagree on that, and maybe it's because I'm an acolyte of Killer Mike and most of the stuff that he's done, especially since 2012. But I think it actually works because, especially when the more aggressive beat comes in for his second verse, I think that's kind of meant to be a backdrop to his fury that he unleashes. It's meant to be aggressive. It's meant to be angry. It's not meant to be this kind of plaintive beat like it is with Leslie, for example. It's meant to be hyperactive, in your face. Here is what's going on, and here is a really angry sounding beat to back up what Killer Mike is saying.
I think he could have been a bit angrier. Not him. I think the backing could have been a bit angrier. But I do agree that when the second verse came in, it did, do what you said. It did get a bit more aggressive. But I think I was just left expecting a bit more.
Okay.
But I do think lyrically it was really good, and like obviously the topic and the what he was saying was really important. So I'm not downplaying that in any way. I was just a bit curious. At the end, it says Reagan like 3 times, and then in between that it says 666. I think obviously that's like the number of the devil. But in your interpretation, what do you think that he's trying to imply?
Now, I did actually look this up because I actually included it in my list, which I'm currently doing on my website, shameless plug, Azerbaijan or harrybadger543.com. Please go and check it out. Of my 100 favourite songs of all time, and this came in at number 78. So I did a bit of research on it as well for that, and I found out that basically Ronald Reagan's full name is Ronald Wilson Reagan. Now, all of those letters have 6 letters in their name.
Oh.
So, I mean, you can film your own interpretation from that, but that's what I think he came up with, was that this kind of 666 idea. And I know this has been a theory which has been propagated before. So it wasn't just Killer Mike coming up with it. This is something I believe that someone else did. I can't remember for the life of me who it was, but someone came up with that theory of, Reagan's name being basically 666, so therefore he was an advocate of the devil or something like that. So I'm pretty certain that's why. And if it isn't, then, well, woe is me.
No, I mean, that would make sense, but then it also has all the different connotations with it, which obviously he's implied throughout the entire song. Pretty well from the second verse onwards. It has those kind of connotations. From what you've said, it makes more sense than what I thought, that he was sort of equating him to this. I'm not religious, so I don't want to get, called out, but he's sort of equating him to this devil-like character, saying what a poor effect he had on America. I can
understand that, but I'm pretty certain that's the main reason why.
Yeah.
But because of the numbers or the number of letters in his name.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to say is suspicious because, conspiracy theory and all that, but still. But of course, that's my personal take on it. And of course, you can form your own take because, as we do every week, as we have to always do, we remind you guys that there is a Spotify playlist for all of the songs that we mentioned this week. So go and listen to all of the ones that we mentioned, and maybe you'll find your new favourite song in there somewhere. Or you can just form your own opinion and tell us how stupid we are for liking various songs that we do. Which I'm sure is the point of music, but it's fine. Yeah. So my number 3 takes a move away from rap, albeit temporarily, for another appearance. I know I've mentioned him so many times on this podcast. I know I have. But I can't ignore this song because of how significant it was for me personally. And it's the song Icarus by Madeon. This was released back in 2012 when Madeon was only 17. I'm just going to leave that there as its own point in itself. It was a song that got me back into Madeon after neglecting a lot of his music, which was, again, a very stupid thing for me to do. But it's a progressive electronic jam, and there's always just so much stuff going on, but if you take one thing out of it, it would lose so much of its charm. And especially when everything combines together at the end, it kind of feels like a progression has been made, especially for the second drop, in my opinion, where we've reached this peak, this euphoria. And I know I've said it again many times, I always love a song which has the development, has this growth, and has this moment at the end of the song which is euphoric, is this kind of we've made it, so to speak. And it kind of makes it feel like, flying around, almost floating in the air, much like, of course, Icarus did himself as he flew too close to the sun and his wings got burnt, and then, well, you can kind of guess what happened after that.
I actually know this, or at least I know the very opening. It might have been used in like a trailer or an advert for something, but I definitely recognised the opening, and I really liked it. As with all of these, it's just not my taste, and I don't have a musical reason as to why it's not. It just, I mean, like, I wouldn't choose to listen to it, but if it came on, I was like somewhere, I don't know, I would enjoy it. but like I'm not gonna go and choose to listen to it, which is a somewhat win, I think, for you in terms of these kind of things. Yeah, I just wondered, either specifically or more generally, do for maybe electronic music in general, I don't know, but do titles have like any reference to ideas or motifs or things that are used in it, or is it literally just completely random?
I think sometimes, like, I think you can sometimes. Again, from my own personal perspective, I genuinely feel like when the drop kicks in, especially, it feels like a very floaty atmosphere. Which again, as I said earlier, Icarus did, not very successful. But that's my own interpretation. I think sometimes you can get those feelings, although I know that a lot of the time there are just some songs which are just named because there is a name that needs to be given to it. I know, for example, ID, that was released by Kygo back in 2015. That was the Ultra Music Festival anthem. It was given the name ID because it didn't have a name, and
Right.
so like it literally it doesn't bear any relevance to the song at all. It doesn't have any kind of significance. It was just given to it. So sometimes that does happen, but I think sometimes it can also resemble what the producer was wanting to give off at that particular time for that particular song.
Okay. So do you think this song, obviously you mentioned the feeling of like floating and flying. Do you think that was intentional
Yeah.
then?
Yeah, I think that was intentional. I think that was, it was kind of at the time when Madeon was starting to find his sound, creating these really amazing soundscapes, and again, as you say, the flying feel. So I think that's kind of one of the key reasons why. But again, that could just be my interpretation. It might not be the actual reason, but I don't know Madeon personally, so I guess I'll probably never know,
Yeah.
which is a shame. We'll have to wait and see how that turns out. Stay tuned for that. Um, so my fourth song is Ocean Wisdom's Tom and Jerry. Now, this is back to rap again, and I know that, again, I featured two rap songs, but considering Sarah features a load of acoustic stuff, you can please excuse me for this one. And in the song, he basically reminisces on his past and how he's made it to where he is, as well as like his trials on the streets. But it's more his ability to switch between the flows and the messages so seamlessly, which is so admirable throughout this discography, and particularly in this track. And he also has a lot of influences from like the American boom bap era, so people like the Wu-Tang Clan, for example. And you can tell that from the beat. As soon as it kicks in, it just has me nodding my head every time. And in case you are wondering why the song is called Tom and Jerry, yes, it is the TV show that he references, because he's telling people to chase him for the cheese, because Jerry chases the cheese because he's a mouse, and Tom sets up the traps to make Jerry get the cheese. And I'm sure you get the idea by now.
Yeah. Again, I have no musical reason. It's just not my thing, as we probably know. Um,
My indoctrination attempts have failed significantly, and I hate to say it.
I mean, I like Dave, and I think honestly, just take that and run. Like,
Yes.
but no, honestly, like, it's good. I liked the beat and the I don't know what you call it, the rapping style. I liked that. I just wouldn't. It's not. Again, it's the thing. Like, if it came on, I'd enjoy it, but I wouldn't choose to listen to it. But I didn't really like get the message of what he was trying to say until the chorus, when I was like, Tom and Jerry metaphor, like that makes sense. How in the verses do you think he conveys the message clearly? Like, what does he do?
It's him reminiscing on his past. So it's kind of like the aim that he's had throughout his entire career, so to speak, of chasing the cheese, which, if you don't know, is a slang term for money. So basically, it's like that kind of, continuation of being like, continuously chasing for the money and needing to continue rapping. I think it kind of, the whole message gets wrapped up in the song where he says at the end, face the facts, I need to be rapping. Where it's like, that's the reason how he's going to get the money. That's how he's going to. And obviously, getting the money is such a standard trope in rap, and I do understand that. But I think it's kind of like, again, it's from where he's come from to where he is now. And as a result of that, it's, again, the idea of he needs to rap in order to, A, keep himself relevant, and B, keep himself solvent.
Money is a common topic in rap, but it tends to be, look how much money I make, rather than I have to make money to survive, I have to keep rapping. So I think that's another reason why I liked it, is because it is taking maybe a typical topic of rap, but changing it to make it not typical, and sort of his real life experience as well.
Yeah, so kind of subverting it and flipping on its head almost. So yeah, I'm very happy with the fact that the song exists because, as I say, it introduced me to one of my favourite rappers right now. And so that's why it features in my number 4. Now, you probably won't expect my number 5. This is, again, a massive curveball because it is basically a folk rock pop song from 1987 entitled Luca by Suzanne Vega. And we are back to social commentary again, so there you go. Enjoy. It apparently took Vega like a couple months to find the angle she wanted, but 2 hours to write the song as a whole. And she wrote it from the perspective of the child, who is called Luca. Hence why the language is a bit simple, but I actually think that this adds to the song's appeal immensely because it makes the lyrics very poignant and plaintive and actually really emotional, especially as he always puts the blame on himself as opposed to his oppressors. And the music behind it is really emotional to back it up. Side note, it did actually make me cry. So the title actually referenced a young boy she saw who seemed a bit set apart from everyone else he was playing with, who was actually called Luca, although she doesn't know whether or not he was actually in this situation. And again, it's been a staple of like my car playlists for a long time, and I remember hearing it again actually when I was working in France on the radio, and I was cleaning a table. I immediately stopped and I was like, where have I heard this song before? I looked it up and I was like, oh my god, all memories of nostalgia are just flooding back in their droves. And so as a result of that, I couldn't really ignore putting it in on this list, even if it is another social commentary song.
This is more my style. I really, really like this. As you said, it has very, very simple lyrics, and it's as a child would say it, but again, it's very effective and such a beautiful song. You mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned it now, but you mentioned in your notes that it didn't have very good reception.
Yeah, it didn't. So when Vega originally performed it live before it got released, most people didn't like the song, and when it turned out that the song was about child abuse, it got an even less positive reception than what it did before. But Prince actually wrote to Vega saying that it was the most amazing song that he'd heard in a while. So take Prince's word for it, not mine.
Yeah. I mean, the only explanation I really have for that is maybe people just weren't ready to hear a message like that at that time so overtly. A lot of singers and artists tend to like hide what they're saying in like metaphors and just in other ways, and then it's only when you listen to a song where you think it's about something, and then they do an interview or something, and they're like, yeah, it's about this completely different thing. But this has such an I say it's pretty obvious what the message is, if not maybe as far as it's just sort of the message for me before I read the notes was just a child struggling, or like someone just struggling with something. I didn't know what, but I think just people weren't ready for that, and music is meant to be listened to and enjoyed, and I don't think maybe they could enjoy that with a message so sad as that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's kind of like what it was that people just weren't ready for it, and I do think it is quite subtle for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Until maybe the last few lines which aren't repeated in the song, where it's like, I guess I'd like to be alone, nothing broken, nothing thrown. I think that's when it kind of all comes together. Whereas beforehand, it's like, well, what's going on? Why is everything like, why is he kind of falling over and stuff? And it's like, oh, that's why, because he's suffering really badly.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of the meaning was very well hidden away right up until that moment, and I think that's when the song changes completely.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of again another reason why it grew on me so much when I listened to it a lot more as I was older, and I realized what the song was about. Because again, when you're 7 or 8, you don't understand that the song is basically about a child being completely abused, especially if you're not in that situation. So that's why, again, it struck me a lot when I was older, and why I decided to feature it as the last song in my particular list. So that is all of my selections, and now we move on to Sarah's stuff.
Yeah, my first song, I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago on what I've been listening to this week, but I've been listening to it ever since then, and I had to include it on this list because it is a name. And the song is Bon Iver by MXN I don't know if that's how you say her name. Anyway, it's the first single from a new EP that hasn't actually been released yet, called Dusk, and that plays an important sort of topic in the song. Um, the song overall introduces the idea of dusk and the contrasts of beginnings and endings. Apparently, if you don't know who Bon Iver is, they're a Grammy award winning folk band, um, founded in 2006, and a lot of people they're quite popular. A lot of people like their music. The reason I chose this though is because I love her voice. It's so unique and just very understated. It's not very showy, but she hits every note and all that stuff. She's a very very good singer, and also I love the sound of the song and how dreamy it is, especially that vocal harmonies before each chorus. The melodies are ascending in like a sort of parallel motion, and it's just beautiful. I don't. There's no other way to describe it. It's just a beautiful song.
You might be actually surprised to hear this, but I really liked it.
Yes.
I really liked it. I don't know why. I loved the ambient. Again, it's like you with a couple of my songs. For whatever reason, I just absolutely loved the ambience, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Maybe it was the key, maybe it was the harmonies, maybe it was a mixture of the two. But I loved the sound of this, and I don't know if you heard this, but it reminds me a lot of Lily Allen's cover of "Somewhere Only We Know,"
Yes.
which
Yeah.
I
No,
do like a
that does
lot
make
as
sense.
well. So I was like, yeah, okay, I can deal with this song. The one thing which I did have a very small gripe about, again, you can call me like a grammar nerd or English grammar upholder or whatever it might be, all you want. But I don't like the fact that there's no like the pronunciation or the writing the writing of the song is all over the place because there's no capitals and there's no anything like that. And I know a few people I like as well, like Run the Jewels, for example, have done the same thing. And I was wondering why you think, why do you think that artists aren't using that kind of proper pronunciation in their names or song titles as much anymore? Capitalizing things, or just like, doing everything in one word, or capitalizing some words, or all of it, that kind of thing.
I think the capitalization thing, at least I've noticed. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but the not capitalizing everything sort of started with indie music and just sort of trying to be different. That's especially what I've noticed. A lot of indie songs either capitalize everything or nothing, and there's sort of no in
Yeah.
between. Um, but it is very much a sort of trying to be different kind of thing. And I don't know. I mean,
Yes.
when I'm like texting people, as you know, and get very annoyed at, I don't capitalize anything. I have my auto capitalization turned off because I just don't like it. I think this is going to sound really weird, but I think capital letters very aggressive. And like capitalizing the beginning of sentences and like using full stops for me is just it sounds like I'm shouting at them. And I think all of those things are just visually different and they might entice someone to listen to the song. Especially what I've noticed on Spotify, and I've done this subconsciously, if a song title doesn't have any capital letters or has all capital letters, I'm more likely to click on it and listen to it just because I'm like, oh, that's going to be a different sound because they're quirky and haven't used capital letters. So it might be trying to appeal to that kind of audience.
Okay, I can kind of see that, and I can kind of understand, like edgy-ish nature that they give off. It's just that I sometimes think it's being edgy for the sake of being edgy. And again, I like songs that have done that, and that did annoy me. I was just like, really, do we need to do this? But again, that's just me and my antiquated 19th century ways of English grammar and stuff.
I mean, it doesn't affect, in my opinion, it doesn't affect the song. Like it doesn't affect how the song sounds. So
No, it doesn't affect the song. It doesn't affect the song. It's just like one of those things where I'm just like, come on, please, just do it right for the love of God. But that's just me.
So moving on to my second song on the list, and I originally was gonna pick the first version, the original version of the song, and then I remembered that this existed, and it's El Tango de Roxanne, sung by Jose Feliciano. Ewan McGregor and Jacek Koman. I'm so sorry. I've completely butchered the names. Apart from Ewan McGregor, I think I'm pretty confident with that. Um, but this is from the film Moulin Rouge, which is one of my favourite films. The film was released in 2001, and it's about the famous French performance venue. So the scene that the song features in is like a split scene, if you like, and it goes between two tango dancers at the rehearsal, and then the other bit is a scene in which Audrey, who is a man, I'd like to point out, just before anyone jumps to conclusions with the name Audrey, is seducing Satine, who's played by Nicole Kidman, because he's funding the production that they're putting on. As well, I think what works really well with this one is the vocals are split as well between the two different scenes. So there's Jose, who's actually the man doing the tango dance. So he's singing just, to create the music for the tango. But then Ewan McGregor steps in with this really heartfelt, emotional part when he's singing to Satine, being like, don't do that. You don't need to. I love you. Also, I mean, Moulin Rouge does an incredible job of taking these pop songs and making them musical and changing up the sound completely, like making The Police's Roxanne into a tango. Like, that's insane. But it works so well, I think.
It's the second episode in a row you've picked a cover of Roxanne. I've just
Oh,
realised.
yeah, George Michael. But I mean, that was what I was listening to. So, it's fine.
Yeah, I completely didn't clock that this was the original until about 2 minutes ago when you said that this was the original cover. I'm not going to lie. And it's just not my thing. I didn't really enjoy it that much. I didn't really know what was going on most of the time. I was just like, wait, what? Okay, so we're going from this to that. And again, I'll probably need the context of the actual film to understand it better.
Yeah.
But my question to you is that when the singer came in, I genuinely jolted up and my eyes was like my eyes bulged. I was like, what? Wait, hang on, come again. And I was just wondering if you knew if the contrast was intentional or not.
I think his voice is he's Spanish or Portuguese. I'm going to go with Spanish because it's a tango. But he has that sort of aggressive, I don't want to say aggressive Spanish sound, but that's what a tango really is. It's just sort of aggressive Spanish. And he has the voice that goes with that. I think the contrast really comes between his voice and Ewan McGregor's voice. He's sort of this whiny, needy man. I think that's the main contrast between, putting on this show and like the rehearsals and all that, and then having this other scene happening at the same time where he's singing. He's not in the same room as the team, but he knows what's happening and he knows that is the time it's happening. He's actually in the rehearsal. I think that's where the main contrast is. I don't think between the first singer's voice, so Feliciano's voice, and the sound of the music, I don't think there's a contrast there. But I think there is between his voice and McGregor's voice because of the contrast in what they're singing about.
Okay. Yeah, that does make things a bit clearer, but even so, it still did take me aback.
Yeah, I mean, it fits in better with the scene. Feliciano has a bit of dialogue before that, or like while the intro is playing. I think it's just a bit of an extended intro, and he has some dialogue, so it's not as shocking when he does it in the film. Because I remember when I listened to the song out of the context for the first time, he comes in, he sort of shouts before he starts singing as well, and it's quite aggressive. I do agree, but I think in the film his style of singing works with the style of the music. I think there's a moment when their voices come together so perfectly at the climax, which is at roughly 3:35, 36. And it's just incredibly powerful as both of these themes come together, where there's like the traditional Roxanne lyrics and then Ewan McGregor's more elongated lines where he's like basically crying at this point. And I think it works so beautifully together. So moving on to the third song on my list, and it's a song called Renee, I think that's how you say their name, by a band called Sales, again in all capitals as we mentioned before.
Yay!
I bet you love that.
Yeah.
So this song was released in 2013, has been popularized this year with the release of TikTok. The song itself, the subject matter is about when you're at a bar or a club and you meet someone and who you think is like your perfect soulmate, and you only end up, talking to them, spending the night with them, and then never seeing them again, but instantly sort of being taken with them and being like, this is who I'm going to end up with, and then just sort of never seeing them again. The name comes from a name of a girl who the guitarist of the band, his name's Jordan apparently, had the same type of interaction with. The main reason I picked this is because I really like the atmosphere that's created with the song, and just the really chilled out, laid back vibes, along with, again, her unique voice. I just think I have a thing for really unique voices, because I really like her voice in this, and I think it works really, really well with the song.
Yeah, I loved Bon Iver. I didn't like this at all. I just felt like I was going round and round in circles, and it wasn't really going anywhere. Is there any development going to happen? Not really. And it kind of like sounded to me just literally like, one woman and a guitar in like a basement or something, like, recording it wherever. And so I was thinking, like, again, it's kind of been answered already, but do you think that kind of atmosphere is the song's selling point, or is there, again, a bit more to it alongside that?
I do sort of agree with you, but that's more the reason that I like it rather than dislike it. But yeah, I think the selling point is to create, how people have got really into like Polaroid cameras again, this sort of
Yeah.
like lower quality kind of sound and vibe, if you like, has come back in again. And I think that that's what this sound, what they tried to recreate with this sound. And I think it's appealing to a lot of people. And I guess if you don't like it, then obviously it's not appealing to you. But in terms of like creating this, it makes you sort of feel, it makes me feel kind of homely.
Yeah, I can understand that. I still think it's just not my thing at all, and I just didn't like it. One thing I did enjoy, was probably the least noticeable thing in the entire song, was the kind of cicada noise in the background at the start, because again, it's like an evening thing.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I used to go a lot to the south of France, and just as we were going to sleep, it basically just be an absolute army of cicadas chirping every night, which is definitely a sound that I remember very, very fondly. When that came on, I was like, oh, okay, I can deal with it. I like this idea. And then I remembered I actually had to listen to the song, and then I was like, oh wait, hang on a minute.
Well, again, I think that comes along with the sort of lower budget sound, as in you don't have all these noise cancelling things. You get a bit of the background noise in as you're recording. So like that sort of created a nice like atmosphere. So that kind of goes along with the whole like popularization of sort of like using older technology and stuff that hasn't been quite as developed as the stuff that they use now, if that makes sense. But yeah, going on to talking of using older equipment, and older things. It's a terrible, terrible link, but I'm going with it. The next song on my list is a song by the Kinks, and it's called Lola, and I guess it's probably one of their most popular songs. So this song was released in 1970. I think is it the oldest one I've included? Probably.
Barring the orchestral ones.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. The song rather than piece, I guess. This is a really sort of potentially controversial song topic, but I will try and say it in the best way possible. So the song details a romantic encounter between a young man and a possible transvestite whom he meets in a club in Soho, London. But at the time of releasing, due to its controversial subject matter and the use of the brand name Coca-Cola, the song received a lot of backlash and was banned in Britain and Australia for a time. But nowadays, the single version uses cherry cola instead of Coca-Cola. I thought that was an interesting little thing. But the album version still uses Coca-Cola. The reason I picked this song, I just really like the Kinks sound. Like, I'm not a massive fan of your late 60s, early 70s kind of sound, but I like the Kinks sound, especially on their song "You Really Got Me," which I first heard and didn't realize it was a Kinks song, but I first heard it was like they did the cover of it in the Magic Roundabout film when I was really young. That's the first place I heard it.
Wait, did they actually?
Yeah, Dylan sings
I don't remember
it.
that.
And that's the first place I heard it, and then I was like, what is this song? And I went and listened to it, and I was like, oh, the Kinks are actually like really good. Not sure how controversial the story is, or whatever you think of the story, it does a good job at telling the story with use as well of like interesting chords and harmonies thrown in, typical of that sort of time, and I just really like it.
Yeah, this is the one song I knew.
Yeah.
I knew this one beforehand. It is a classic, and it's been, again, on my car CDs for a long time, or my dad's car CDs. So I've heard this song a lot. And I do like it. I prefer the sound of the bridges over the verses for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's the harmonic shifts.
Yeah.
But you say that it mentioned, obviously, like, you like the Kinks' sound from like the earlier stuff, and I do to an extent as well. Not all of them, having listened to like a couple of their albums, because again, a lot of them do meld into one.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you thought that it was kind of like a bridge between their older stuff and their newer stuff, because it has that vintage Kinks sound, but then there's also a kind of development in a story and also in a harmonic sense too.
So their earliest album I just looked up was 64, and that was what had You Really Got Me on it. And I agree with you, the fact that like that album and maybe the next one, I can't remember what it's called, they do sort of, the sound kind of merges into one, and this is where they start to sort of, I can't speak their later stuff like after this, but this song for me kind of sounds a bit different, and it sounds like they're trying to maybe branch out into more acoustic-y type things. I mean, it wasn't very acoustic, but you know what I mean, it's not the same, it's clearly not the same sound as the earlier stuff. I think it branches out from the sort of basic chords and the sound. I don't think the sound was, I think it was a little bit basic. Not to say that I don't like it, but I do think it was a little bit basic. I think this is more intricate. And then I will assume that later on in their career, they only develop that further. Okay, so my final song is a song called Claudia by Phineas. I think I may have mentioned him before on the podcast, but I can't quite remember exactly what that was in reference to. This song was released in 2019, and I mean, everyone at this point probably knows Phineas as Billie Eilish's brother and songwriter, and they collaborate on pretty much everything she does. But he also has some very good music of his own. But this song was written entirely by him, just coming from his head alone, which I thought was pretty impressive. And you can tell he's a very good songwriter. All it is a love song to his girlfriend, Claudia Sulewski. I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. The reason I picked this song is because I really like his voice. And as I said, his writing style, you can definitely hear the similarities to some of Billie Eilish's stuff in terms of the way he writes a song and even some of the sounds that are used, but it is definitely tailored more to his voice and his style of singing rather than hers. But you can hear the similarities between the two.
Well, first of all, you've answered my question literally straight away again, but that's fine. I mean, it's all right. It didn't strike me as anything special. It didn't strike me as anything, awful. It was just perfectly middle of the road kind of thing. I did find the minimalist start a bit interesting though. I did find that a bit interesting, but it was the first song I'd actually ever heard by him. So maybe another question could be like, if you were to, say to someone, okay, Phineas has got his own thing, what would be the first songs that you would recommend, and would this song be included in it?
I don't think it would, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, I do like this song, but again, I don't think it's his best. I would, however, recommend, he released an EP in the same year called Blood Harmony, and pretty much everything on that EP I would recommend. I guess my favourite probably be Partners in Crime and Let's Fall in Love for the Night. I would just send anyone who asked me straight to that EP, because that sort of shows who he is as an artist really, really well. But yeah, you can definitely hear that he does write songs with Billie Eilish, because he has very much a similar writing style, but just more sort of, her songs tend to be quite dark and his songs aren't, but he uses the same sort of styles and all the different the layering of the voice. He uses that a lot, and a lot of the electronic elements are quite similar. I guess they use probably similar equipment because they live together and they are related. But you can definitely tell that he's tailored it more to his style and his voice rather than hers.
Okay, that's That's fair enough. I mean, I don't know if I'd probably like go out and intently listen to his stuff, because again, it's just not like my thing completely. But again, like many things, I 100% understand the appeal. I understand why he is like where he is and all that kind of stuff. I do understand. It's just not something that I would again willingly sit down and go, yeah, I will happily listen to this on a regular.
Mm.
But that again, is just me, and you can hunt me down and shoot me down if you want to.
I mean, to be fair, you do sort of. I don't want to say you have a point because you don't really make a point, but like he is obviously a very talented musician, but I think he's most talented in the area of songwriting. He is a very talented songwriter, but not to say that he's not a talented singer or musician or performer at all. So yeah, so that's my list complete. So now we move on to the question submitted by Sarah. So thanks, Sarah. Sounds like I'm thanking myself. It was not me. That would be weird. Um, the question was, what is a song that you like by an artist you don't like, and then a song that you don't like by an artist you do like? This was actually really hard to think of, but I hope I've come up with a couple of interesting things. The first song is, I could have actually included it in this list, to be fair. I didn't really think about that until, well, just now. It's a song called Betty, and it is by Taylor Swift. I mean, I'm not a fan of her, like, newer, I think I say newer stuff, like pop stuff, and even her old stuff wasn't amazing, but it was just really nostalgic to me, like all her old country stuff. Her new album Folklore, it's just different. It's just really different to her stuff, and it was released sort of, no one expected it. No, she didn't. There was no announcement of like, by the way, my new album's coming out soon. It was just, it's out. Go and listen to it. We were all like, oh, okay. But it's again, she hasn't capitalized anything, so sorry, Harry. But it just sounds so different to what she's done before, and I really like it, and I didn't expect to, I'll be honest. But yeah, I did. However, the song that I don't like by an artist I do like is called 11 Minutes, and it's by Youngblood, but it also has Halsey and Travis Barker on it. I love Youngblood. I think he's amazing. And I pretty much like every single song he's released apart from this one. I just don't think it really fits in with other stuff that he does. You mean currently, if you disagree, that's okay, but I just didn't enjoy listening to it. And I love Youngblood, and I was kind of sad. But maybe that's just because there were other people on it. I don't know. But yeah, so those are my answers to the question.
So again, it was kind of like, it was difficult, but for different reasons, because I had a few choices, and I could have very easily picked a Logic song from Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, because apart from like 2 or 3 songs on an album, I absolutely hated it. But instead, I've decided to go for Steam Machine by Daft Punk. Random Access Memories and Discovery are 2 exceptional albums, but the one sandwiched in between them, Human After All, is not very good. And I only liked about 2 or 3 songs from it. But Steam Machine, it's just I don't know what it is. It's repetitive, which again is something the entire album suffered from as a whole. It doesn't develop at all. It just stays the same the entire way through. And the vocal noise of the person almost whispering in my ears, Steam Machine, is so obnoxious. Like, Sarah's again just kind of, winced at that. That's how I felt when I listened to the song for the first time. I was just like, what is going on? It does a great job of sounding like a Steam Machine, I'll give it that, but it wasn't the concept I wanted to hear, and certainly not on a Daft Punk album, considering how many amazing songs they've done over the years. So that's the one that I decided to go for. But on the flip side, a song which I love by an artist or group that I don't really like that much, you may be a bit surprised with this one, but it's All Things Must Pass by George Harrison, but I'm picking the Paul McCartney cover, which he did for Concert for George, after George Harrison's passing in 2001. So as a rule of thumb, I don't really like songs by members of the Beatles all that much, especially their earlier stuff, so like, between 1962 and 1965. But this song is excellent. And the one which I picked, again, the Paul McCartney version, is the song that I heard first of this, song, I guess. It's the version I heard of this song first, and the one which I associate with the most. And it's a really beautiful song about the ephemerality of life as a whole, and that any troubles you have will pass. And it just became so much more poignant when performed at a concert celebrating the life of an extremely talented musician who had died the previous year. So I guess that added an extra emotional symbolism to the song. And so as a result of that, like, I've basically grown to love it. And it's one of, I'd say, 4 or 5 Beatles songs or Beatles affiliated songs which I do openly admit to liking. But by far and away, this is the best. So that is my answer to that particular question.
Yeah, so now we move on to the final section, as always, and that's with what we've been listening to this week. So, Harry, would you like to start us off with that?
Yeah, so I've actually been on a couple of road trips over the last couple of weeks, obviously, since we last did our recording. And a song I found myself listening to a lot on during those road trips was the Example remix of the Street song When You Wasn't Famous. Now, the original song's kind of like about his troubles with fame, or, well, his subverted troubles with fame, but Example switches it up and makes it about how dangerous life is as a celebrity, because, as he says in the chorus, when you're a famous face, it gets really easy to get killed. And it kind of goes on with that particular theme for the entirety of the song. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of humorous. It's very much example of like 2006, 2008 kind of era. And I really enjoyed it. My second song is, I finally got around to listening to Panic at the Disco's most of their discography, and I think I found my favourite song by them, which is the Ballad of Mona Lisa. I really like this song. It's kind of a rock song, which I, again, really enjoy. And it's got this kind of really cool development. And for whatever reason, I love Brendan Urie's vocals in this song. Of course, I Write Sins Not Tragedies is probably my favourite Panic at the Disco song, but barring that one, I really liked the Ballad of Mona Lisa when I listened to it. I was just sitting there like, you know what? This is very good on its own accord. Mm. And again, similarly, I finally got around to listening to Hounds of Love, and my favourite song from that, again, I've been listening to a little bit over the week, Waking the Witch. I love that concept. I love that concept so much. It's so ethereal and scary, but that's the whole point of the song. And it sounds so weird, but I love it so much. It was just, I listened to it and I was like, oh my God, I was taken aback by it, but in a really good way this time. And it was just it haunted me almost, but in a really positive manner. So I was very glad to be like, you know what, I finally got around to listening to this album and I can form an opinion on it. And Waking the Witch is probably my favourite song from the album. And my final one, we're going, okay, I'm not bringing this up again because, you know, I want to, but I've genuinely been listening to this a lot over the last couple of weeks. We're moving back to Pirate Metal and Ailstorm again with their new release, Big Ship, Little Ship. And it's basically about, you know, how living in various different places, such as a car, a shed, a city, or in a lighthouse, are just not very good. But the guy was born to live on a ship. And so the pirate's life is the one for him. Again, it's really basic, but that's in terms of lyrical content, but that's the whole point. But I also just love the music as a whole. It's kind of taking folk music and putting a metal spin on it with double kick drums and violins and all that kind of stuff. And it's all actually a really clever musical fusion. It's just that the lyrics are complete banter, and that's what I love about it the most. So that is my list. And just as a backstory, Sarah's been celebrating a lot throughout that.
Yeah, I've missed pirate metal. I'm so happy you mentioned it again. No,
I'll make this a weekly theme at some point.
Yeah, pirate metal. Oh, love it. Anyway, no, the Vices and Virtues album is my favourite Panic at the Disco album. I'm so happy you mentioned that, and I'm so happy you mentioned Kate Bush as well. I don't know what to say. I was in shock, and I'm very happy that you mentioned those things.
I knew that would happen.
I mean, you might not be so happy with my choices, but that's fine. So my first pick for this week, what I've been listening to, is a song called Why Won't You Be My Girl by William Hinson. Never heard of him before, but the only way I could really describe this song is like indie summer. Just picture like what would, you know, be at a classic indie summer festival, you know, kind of sad, but yeah, exactly. But the song just sort of reminds me of a time when it was a bit warmer and a bit just nice, just a nicer time in general, you know, we could go outside without fear for our lives. It's just just reminds me of an all-round better time, and I've been listening to it a lot recently, especially since I moved back up to Manchester. The next song I've been listening to is a song called Dunno like don't know, but the slang term don't know, by a new artist called Headache. I did a little bit of research on this because I thought that he sounded like someone that I'd listened to before, and lo and behold, he used to be the lead singer of Lower Than Atlantis. Don't know if you've heard of them, but has a sort of
Okay.
a very British sounding voice. Again, it is very British indie, chilled out sound. And again, I can't find anything before this year for him under this name. So very new artist. Go check him out because he has a really really good sound. And my final song is a song called Obey, and it's Youngblood. Having mentioned Youngblood before, Youngblood and Bring Me the Horizon. This song is so good. It's just it brings together sort of the old sound that I used to listen to and the new stuff that I listen to perfectly into one song. And I think that both of their different vocal styles and sounds work so well together. Having said I don't like Youngblood singing with anyone else, I think it just works really well with Bring Me the Horizon. Whether that's just because I like Bring Me the Horizon or I don't know, but I think their styles work really really well together.
I really need to listen to that song because I saw it on Facebook somewhere, and I just thought I made a mental note of that, but I just haven't got around to listen to it yet. But I definitely will give that a shot. So, well, I mean, I haven't listened to Youngblood's music at all, so who knows?
I don't know if you'd like it, but I think you'd like.
The instrumental parts behind maybe.
And so I think you would like this song.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just not Youngblood as a whole.
yeah, his own music. I don't know. Maybe give it a listen and see, but because I don't want
I'll
to.
give it a
Yeah,
go
yeah.
at some stage. I'll give it a go at some stage. But regardless of that, that just about wraps up this week's episode of the TuneIn Podcast. Of course, we will be back next week with a theme a bit similar to the one we did a few weeks back on film. Next time we're going to delve into my area of interest, which is soundtrack songs. So stay tuned for that because that will be a lot of fun. But for now, thank you very, very much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time,
We'll see you then.